Hello, for those of you who are listening, my name is Tim Humphrey. I'm a partner of Brown&Co in the commercial property team, and I'm here with my colleague James Brown, who is a partner in our agricultural business consultancy team. We have a quick chat today about potential farm diversification and options therein. As James has been out on farm recently with a lot of clients. If you can elaborate.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Obviously, Brown&Co have been undertaking a significant number of Farm Future Resilience funds under the DEFRA scheme, and we are talking to farmers about the potential for diversification. One of the key topics that has kept creeping up is redundant farm buildings and their scope to be used for commercial rental storage. Tim, could you just give an indication of the market value and rental figures for that?
Yeah, absolutely. But firstly, I think it's important for the clients or the farming or landowners to identify what assets they've got or the nature of the asset they've got that they could use for alternative uses or income streams. So whether it be a grain store, traditional brick pantile building, or a cart shed, whatever it might be, there may well be alternative uses for that. And the nature of the asset will depend on the return you can get in terms of rental income. So an example would be typically the flavour of the month is at this stage light industrial or industrial storage uses rather than offices in rural locations or a leisure type use, and that's because of the shortage of supply.
Okay, and in terms of price per square
foot? So in terms of price, again, it depends on the size and the quality of the asset that you've converted. So if you take an example we've done recently over here in the Midlands, is clients converted a former general purpose agricultural building, which was part used as livestock housing in the winter and fertilizer and general storage during the other months. Concrete floor, steel portal frame, cement fibre roof and Yorkshire boarding sides, and that was revamped to an light industrial unit, and the rent we were achieving there is about £7.50 to £8 per square foot. Depending on the nature of the property, those rents will be slightly less if you do a slightly lower specification conversion, but in the main you'll be somewhere in the region of £5. In the Midlands, where we are, be certainly between £5 and £8 a square foot, something in that region.
And obviously, what you've just talked about requires some investment from the client. How do you see the market panning out? Because obviously, there's been a significant amount of change over the last 18 months with COVID, where people have been buying online, and therefore businesses have been looking for storage space. Do you think there's going to be a shift back towards the high street, or do you think that's going to continue in terms of storage space in rural locations is going to be in demand?
I think there's a two-tier market, and that's set to continue because the developers and builders aren't really building the smaller stock. So by that I mean units from 750 square feet to say 5,000 square feet. They're more interested, and the economics don't stack up on a wider scale for that. So whilst the larger market is catered for by the developers, the smaller end will be a combination of the existing stock on the industrial estates and what rural buildings that can be converted. So the answer is, I see the demand continuing. There may be a check in terms of rental increases because they've increased reasonably quickly in the last 3 to 4 years. So that may be tailing off, but they are still set at a good level. So the demand really is driving this. And one advantage many rural settings have is that there is additional land and circulation space. So your typical small industrial unit on an industrial estate, wherever that may be, is unlikely to have any outside storage space and certainly have limited parking space. What many businesses like is the fact that they can convert a landowner can convert a building, and with that comes substantial outside storage space if necessary, and certainly parking and vehicle circulation space. So that's where these units are coming into their own at the moment.
And obviously, if a client is going to invest in that type of diversification, what would you consider the pitfalls to be? And do you think that the buildings need to have good access close to the road, or can they be more in the middle of the farm, particularly if you've got a redundant farm building right in the middle of the holding? Is there scope there for renting those out?
Yeah, location is key, obviously, and the planning will be critical. So that's going to be the biggest headache, perhaps convincing Highways Authority that there's not going to be any issues there. But there is obviously planning legislation that supports the reuse of agricultural buildings for commercial use. So that's a positive. And that really, well, obviously it's close to the public highway or the road network, the better. But we're seeing that more rurally located buildings within a farm don't necessarily mean you can't get them rented out. It's going to need good access in terms of vehicular access. So, you know, a muddy farm track full of potholes may not work, but if you've got a reasonable access, hard standing track to a building that is the middle of the farm, then that's fine. The other things you need to think about will be how that building interacts with the rest of the farm holding, to make sure you're not using buildings that you want to use that will conflict with the farming business. You will need to make sure that there's a lease in place for sure, because it's imperative, and our advice would be that there's a commercial lease between landlord and tenant relationship. So yes, those are the main criteria for.
Yeah, and I would agree with that in terms of when I've been dealing with clients that have maybe had a valuation because they want to borrow money from the bank, that the bank generally asks to see
Absolutely.
those leases. So I think that's good to know and understand, and particularly with clients looking at diversification, I think there's a lot to consider here when pursuing potentially a commercial diversification against maybe an equine diversification or something else that may be of interest.
Correct, absolutely right. And the other thing to bear in mind, of course, if you do get a change of use, a formal change of use from the planning authority, and you do the conversion yourself, it's likely to significantly increase the asset value from over what it was before, which will help with the lending criteria.
Yeah, no, definitely. Okay, well, thank you very much, Tim.
Hopefully that's given you a few ideas, but I think it's important for clients to identify their assets and then perhaps get in contact with one of us, Brown&Co, one of your usual team, to help identify these opportunities. Thank you.